Some of the folk may well still be joining us, but I'm going to start the session to make sure that we maximize the time that we've got available and also have time for discussion after the session. Let me just introduce myself very briefly. Marius Claassen from the CSR in South Africa. And of course, as was introduced in the beginning, I don't know if we're closing up or whether we're going or... Okay, and of course, in partnership with the Institute for the Analysis of Global Security, also with ERDIC and also with AFRICOM, really looking at this very complex issue, and of course, this being a key event for us to share some of our thoughts, but also to get inputs from a broader audience on these issues. So I'm very pleased to in terms of the interactive discussions that we've had to date. Let me then introduce just the three panel members that we've got. Just by name, you all would have received a handout at the door with more information about the members. So I'm not going to go through that detail at the moment. Abebe Anete, just on my left-hand side. Then we've got Professor Peter Kangwanja in the middle there. Welcome, sir. And then Elizabeth Kaka on your right. Elizabeth, thank you very much. Without further ado, again, I'm going to then provide the podium or the mics to the speakers. The arrangements will be the same as the previous session, 10 to 15 minutes discussions. As far as you get into your presentation by 15 minutes, that's as far as we're going to get with it. Okay, so I'll see how I do that, but we're going to do that because it's really important for us to have the discussion. So that'll be arrangement, same as the previous session. Baby, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, all to you. My name is Abel. I'm from Ethiopia. I'm head of Peace and Security Research Department at Ethiopian International Institute for Peace and Development, which is affiliated with Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. We provide policy advice and policy research to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as for standing committee at the Parliament for defense, foreign affairs, and security. Also, we provide advice, technical and policy advice to different stakeholders on peace and security, development, and democracy as well. After saying this, my topic is more of focus on the Horn Africa issue, particularly Ethiopia's experience in relation to addressing the human security, environment security, and the water and energy security as well. If you see the Horn Africa, particularly the Great Horn Africa, Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, this region is more regarded as volatile. Currently, there are a number of peacekeeping missions in this region. In Sudan, there are about 20,000 peacekeeping missions. In Somalia, there are about 25,000 peacekeeping missions. When it comes to South Sudan, there are member countries are contributing peacekeeping missions to bring peace and stability in new state in the South Sudan. The region is more of vulnerable to climate change because of the population size. I mean, if you see that 70% of the population in the region are more pastoralist. The greatest population size in the world is found in this region. The highest population is exactly in South and Sudan. Somalia is the third highly populated with pastoralist community. Ethiopia is, of course, the fifth, and 1/3 of population in Djibouti is pastoralist. So the pastoralist community are more vulnerable to climate change and related problems. So there are different political, economic, and social, as well as environmental challenges in the region. So what role does Ethiopia playing in addressing those problems? I'm going to speak about Ethiopia's role, Ethiopia's factor in bringing peace, stability, and addressing environment, climate change-related challenges in the region. Ethiopia's role in the region is very crucial. Ethiopia believes that environment security is vital to enhance sustainable development in the region. So Ethiopia is playing crucial role because Ethiopia developed a green revolution policy. It's already in place for the past 2-3 years. And it's working to achieve this green revolution in Ethiopia. If you wish, climate resilient economic policy. This is just to bring sustainable development in the region, as well as to ensure human security in Ethiopia, as well as in the entire region and the Great Horn of Africa. Ethiopia, if you see the Ethiopian the statistics in 2013 and 2014, there are about 28 million farmers involved in environment rehabilitation activities. And there are about 90 million hectares were covered by water environment conservation activities. And there are about 7.7 billion trees were planted within 2 years. This indicates that how Ethiopia care about environment security, because environment security is very important and crucial for human development, for peace and the security, as well as entirely to bring stability in the region. As I said, the region is very volatile because of different factors, but Ethiopia's role is very crucial. As natural resources have remained cause for conflict and problem in the region, basically because of the pastoralist life, because people are moving from here to there to get arable land, grass and the water for their, because of their lifestyle, the factor that push people to move, and that factor also cause for conflict. So Ethiopia is contributing to bring the environment conservation and environment security aspect to change the zero-sum game mindset in the region. Ethiopia has, as I said, Ethiopia has playing crucial role because Ethiopia considered that environment conservation and environment security is important, because Ethiopia produces high electric power from water, renewable energy. Energy for peace is Ethiopia's strategic position. Ethiopia provides for neighboring country, for example, for Kenya, 400 megawatt electric power, which it generates from renewable energy. Ethiopia also provides 100 megawatt electric power to the Sudan, and also Ethiopia provides more than 50 megawatt electric power to Djibouti. This indicates that Ethiopia is taking care to the region. Ethiopia is sharing. Ethiopia is bringing peace and stability. Ethiopia is contributing for human security in the region. Also, Ethiopia contributes an infrastructure development, because infrastructure development is very crucial and important to bring stability and the peace in the region. If you see the UN and international agencies report, Ethiopia is achieving great role in infrastructure development. Ethiopia is working to link Ethiopia with Djibouti, Ethiopia with Kenya, Ethiopia with Sudan already is linked by road, but there is a big, the Lamu railway is on process. So how Ethiopia is contributing to bring peace and stability, as well as integrating the regional countries to benefit from natural resource. Also, Ethiopia is achieving some extent Millennium Development. For example, the crucial point in the Millennium Development is human security. Ethiopia is ensuring the food security in the region as well as in the country, because Ethiopia take great emphasis to environment security and food security, as well as health security, which the Health International World Health Organization acknowledged that Ethiopia is achieving Millennium Development Goal in terms of securing human security and social sector, energy sector, water sector. There are a lot of activities and efforts that made assures Ethiopia is moving forward to achieve Millennium Development Goal. This indicates that how Ethiopia cares about human security, environment security, and entirely in the region peace and stability. The other Ethiopia's effort in bringing peace and stability in the region is water for peace. The first country in the Horn Africa region, Ethiopia is the first country who offered portable water development for Djibouti. Djibouti is about 750,000 people. Ethiopia is 80,000. As you might remember, Ethiopia is regarded as water tower of East Africa country. And now Ethiopia is offering potable water to Djibouti, which is about 130 million cubic meter, and which will be totally 37 million metric cubic annually, and that will be for 13 years, free of charge. Ethiopia allocated totally 4,000 hectares of land to develop underground water for Djibouti, because Djibouti is vulnerable to the water security. So Ethiopia is addressing and sharing and implementing the regional peace and stability, as well as sharing natural resource to bring peace and stability in the region as well. The Ethiopia's contribution and providing potable water free of charge gives Djibouti, currently Djibouti is developing 20,000 million portable water, but now it increased 5 times fold on current portable water production capacity to Djibouti. That ensures human security for Djibouti. So this is a great role that Ethiopia is playing in the bringing peace and stability in the region as well. Ethiopia is implementer in the region. If you see the Africa Union strategic plan, and also if you see the IGAD strategic plan in bringing peace and security in the region, environment security, and other different aspects, now Ethiopia is the key actor and implementing those strategic goals in the region. Ethiopia is pioneer, and this is because Ethiopia believes that environment security is vital and crucial to bring peace and stability in the region. Environment security is very important to ensure human security. Environment security is very important to ensure water security as well as energy security in the region. That's why Ethiopia is devoted her strategy to bring to achieve those major and important goals to enhance people-to-people relation, and as well as to benefit from economic development. Now, development has to be shared. Now, Ethiopia is pioneer in sharing development. The neighboring country are poor. They don't have natural. I mean, of course, they do have natural resource, but they don't have capacity to develop and to share to the neighbor country. But because of Ethiopia is now capable enough to share from her development, because of Ethiopia is capable to enhance her economic development and to share with neighboring countries. That's why Ethiopia is pioneer in the region. So this helps to see how regional peace and security is enhancing because of Ethiopia's role, how environment security is enhancing because of Ethiopia's role, how environmental security is enhancing in the region. And my institute, Ethiopian International Institute for Peace and Development, is as part of these activities. It provides policy advice and gives direction to the implementers, different stakeholders in the government apparatuses. Basically, we provide technical advice to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, like I said. We provide to the Parliament Standing Committee, who is oversighting our institution, and also we provide different stakeholders in the government apparatuses. So how can we enhance, how can we link, how can we make this effort in making more broad and benefit the regional countries? I personally believe that, and also my institute, of course, work towards to achieve that goal, is that there must, the research institutes like ours should have a forum to share knowledge and experience so that the regional country to contribute in providing policy directions to the government institutions so that to benefit the people and the society who are vulnerable to different, for example, for environment security, for human security, and the different aspects. So if the Policy Research Institute provide directions to the respective government institutions, then that will help to bring peace and stability as well in the region. So there must, I think that the think tanks has to have their forum to share their knowledge, to support their governments in the way that provide on gaps that are observable at grassroots level. Also,
it's a 1 minute call.
I'm done.
You are done, sorry. Not.
Okay.
No, if you want to conclude, you're welcome. Thank you very much for that regional perspective, and it was certainly, for me, also being involved somewhat in that region, very interesting. As per the previous session, I'm going to allow for a question of clarification. And let me just clarify what a question of clarification is. It means that you're not allowed to ask for new information. So what the person talked about, if you misunderstood something and you're now sitting there being really worried because you think the person said something which you really don't agree with, or that you think, no, it must be something different, I just want to kind of set you at ease before the end of the session. But no new information will be, at this point, provided from the panel. So if anybody has a question of clarification, you're welcome to ask that now. It seems that you were very clear in your presentation. Thank you very much for that. Then I'm going to hand the microphone over to Professor Peter Kangwanja from the African Policy Institute. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you, Chairman. I thought this seat was supposed to be hot. It's very cold. Yeah. Let me begin by saying that the remarks I'll be making are generally representative of what we are doing at the Africa Policy Institute in Nairobi, and also they are drawn largely from our 2014 to 2019 strategic plan, largely. Let me also start by saying that the Africa Policy Institute is a Pan-African think tank. We are dedicated to policy-relevant research on security, governance, and strategic issues. We work and have worked with those who shape and make policy, as well as those who influence it on the African continent. More specifically, from a Kenyan perspective, we have a very, very strong collaboration and working relationship with the International Peace Support Training Center in Nairobi, Karen. We work very closely with the Ministry of Security or Interior, which is security. And we have also had one or two collaboration with the Ministry of Defense on these matters. Continentally, we do work with the African Union on a whole range of things, particularly in areas of governance, peace and security. And we also work with the East African community and have had a number of collaboration with IGAD. So we do also work very closely with the civil society organizations and have a standing arrangement with the leading media house in Nairobi, which is the National Media Center. We work with them closely on analysis of situations in Africa through their East African newspaper, which is read across the region, and the Nation newspaper. Just to mention a few, and we have had a lot of engagement with the United Nations and similar agencies. But continentally, we value this kind of collaboration with the ground-based organization because they will help in the implementation. In regard to what I need to speak to today, I will address 3 basic questions as requested by ACSR. One is what we do in regard to the topic of the day, which is water and security. The other is what we are really pushing. In other words, what our proposals towards addressing the crisis of water and security in Africa is, and finally, what kind of partnerships we are forging to ensure effective implementation of the same. Theory and existing knowledge matters to us. Therefore, we really try to zero in on what exactly is informing the current discourse as it is going. And we are aware that the subject of water, when it comes to security, is classified within the soft, the soft aspect of security, which is normally seen as non-traditional and new. Contrasted with the hard security threats, which are said to be old and traditional. But I don't think this classification is extremely useful because both kind of overlap and they dovetail into each other in a very interesting way. But it's good to keep that classification so that you have a clarity of thought and clarity of analysis that can lead to certain action and to certain actors without conflicting, like getting the wrong actor into the scene. So the treating environmental security, particularly water and security, as a soft security threat. We have looked at the 3 security threats relating to water in the Eastern African region. One is at one level, we have looked at the national challenge. And this is the degradation of regional water towers. One of the main water towers looked at in the Eastern African region, particularly in Kenya, is the Mau water towers. And the degradation of this water tower has had a dramatic, or rather very devastating impact on national security in that particular country and regional implications that have not yet begun to be looked at. The water levels in all the lakes in the Rift Valley started declining for the last 2 or so decades, reaching a high pitch in the 1990s. At the same time, most of the rivers dried out. And of course, you can say the Lake Victoria was also affected by this flow of waters. And of course, the Masai Mara and related game reserves were also affected in terms of the capacity to sustain the wildlife that moves into these areas. But I think the political implications is very interesting because this is the area that has also witnessed the worst cases of communal or ethnic conflict, culminating in the 2007-2008 conflict. And one of our studies drew a direct linkage between the 2007-2008 conflict and the changing nature of water availability and the changing ecosystem as a result of the degradation of that area. And I think the agenda was taken seriously by the Kenyans to the point that both the government, international agencies, and what you can call environmental warriors like the late Nobel winner, who is Wangari Maathai, basically brought their weight to bear on this situation. And what we are seeing in less than a decade is a dramatic change in the environment. For the last 2 years, the lakes in the Rift Valley have started overflowing, reaching the levels they were about a decade ago, which is amazing. I traveled to Lake Nakuru to just witness this, and I saw a changed scenario. The flamingos are coming back and breeding very well. The offices that were almost built into the rakes are now funded because the rake has reached its old levels. We are quite amazed about this and happy about it. The second level at which we are looking at environment is that cross-border relations. And one of the areas we have ourselves focused on broadly is how Lake Victoria is being is a source of conflict, particularly in regard to competition for resources in an area where there are disputed boundaries. And there's one famous island which is a very big joke in the Kenyan politics about Migingo, as it is called in Kenya, or Mijingo, as it is called in Uganda. And this may look as a joke, but had it not been for the spirit of the East African community, it would have escalated into a very serious territorial clash, possibly to the levels of Nigeria, Cameroon, over territory. Because this island is extremely rich in fish. The island apparently is in Kenya, but the fishing grounds are in Uganda. So that the ordinary fishermen don't know this boundary because it's in the middle of the water and there are no markers as to where you can go and where you cannot go. So the Ugandans started arresting Kenyan fishermen and fisherwomen, and they started now relocating into the Kenyan island because the boundary is on the verge of the island. So it was murky. The opposition, the forces opposed to this, literally escalated this into a national conflict, so much so that it became a subject of great debate in Uganda and Kenya. So the point here is that the framework of the East African community is basically has been tested as a possible framework of resolving water-related conflict, even though this has not escalated as would have been expected. Finally, the third is the well-studied the Nile Basin. But the Nile Basin is interesting for us because the countries that are simply in conflict with Egypt, except Ethiopia, are all members of the East African community. I'm talking about Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi. The missing there is Congo and Ethiopia and Southern Sudan. The 5 countries are also the source of the White Nile, which joins into the Blue Nile. And they have agreed on a treaty that need to be ratified to deal with these issues. Egypt and Sudan opposed it. Southern Sudan has supported it since it gained independence. But essentially, the Nile Basin is a good experiment into international and regional cooperation in resolving regional water-based regional conflicts. Of course, the emphasis has been an outdated legal model, which is emphasized by Egypt and challenged by the other 10 riparian states. But the main issue is that is not the law. It is actually the changing dynamics of exploitation of natural resources and also emerging opportunities in the riparian state. So it is really not the law as such. Law is just a manifestation of this deep-rooted kind of contestation. Ethiopia would defend the status quo as it was in the years of the pharaohs. And the rest of the countries would want to look at the future in terms of their visions of development 100 years to come. And there is a crash there. Is Egypt assured of the flow of water? Are the countries in the riparian region assured of their right to develop or to implement their development agendas in the line of this? The Nile Basin Initiative is an interim a framework through which currently the issue is resolved. The interesting debate about the Nile Basin Initiative and which makes it a success is that it is not conceived as a security mechanism. It is perceived as a development framework supported by the World Bank in order to deal with deep-seated security questions or conflict, which are potentially source of conflict. Our interest is basically to study these mechanisms and frameworks that are themselves soft in nature, but addressing very hard questions of security. The final...
A 2-minute call.
Okay. So our proposal, therefore, is to work at this, is to push frameworks at 2 levels. One, at the regional level within the East African Community and IGAD. And 2, to support a policy process that would bring about a framework of utilizing and sharing water-based resources within the framework of the African Union Peace and Security Architecture. And in this regard, and this is basically the conclusion, is what we are doing about implementing this. We have proposed a number. We have already done a number of projects. Some of them have already appeared in journals as articles and as part of our reports. But basically, what we are looking at is a partnership with the UN, UNEP, which we are working on now, to look at environmental challenges and security in the region. And one of the main topics in this particular framework, which we are working on now, is water and security in Africa generally and Eastern Africa broadly. We believe, and this is our conclusion, we believe that it is possible to transform what appears as myriad and complex security crisis arising from water, exploitation of transboundary waters, to cooperation between member states in utilizing these natural resources. Therefore, the model of conflict to cooperation is possible in the Eastern Africa region. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Professor. Again, I'll just allow a question of clarification if anybody misunderstood perhaps a point that was made and are concerned about that. Seems not. Again, you were quite clear. I can see people babbling with many other questions, but we will get to those just now. I'm going to hand over then to Elizabeth Kaka from UNEP. We've just heard about partnerships being established in the region. Elizabeth, if you can share with us your views. I think it is on. You can just talk. Yep.
Okay, thanks. I think it's too cold for me to do anything. My name is Elizabeth Kaka, and I'm from UNEP. I'm just going to briefly talk about the need to work together, to collaborate over the management of resources, and how natural resources can be used for peace building. Then I'll briefly mention what UNEP has done, which in relation to this. The mandate of UNEP, the United Nations Environment Program, it's on environmental issues. And as such, we promote sustainable development of environmental issues, of the environment, of ecosystems, and provide leadership on emerging issues as well. This is very pertinent to Africa. The economy of Africa is nothing but the environment, ecosystems. When you look at agriculture, when you look at tourism, we're talking of environment. When you look at fisheries, when you look at forests, we are talking of environment. But for some reason, you find the environment is put on a low level. If you want to look, the litmus test is look at the budgets. What do the budgets of Africa and most African countries, what do they tell us? The environment is very, very low down the line. Water, equally, the same thing. People will sing about how important water is, but when you go to the budget to see what needs to be done to develop those resources, you find that it's really, really low. And what makes the African issue more challenging is that most of these resources, particularly water, cuts across borders. I don't think there's any country in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, which doesn't belong to any transboundary river, transboundary basin. And it's not only surface water, at least it's seen and it's addressed. We have the issue of groundwater. We are talking of climate change. And the idea was You know, like when we talk about water security, adaptation, we want to focus on the groundwater, but we don't even know what's under. And what's more challenging, the boundaries of groundwater and surface water, they don't coincide. They don't coincide. You don't know what's there. And also the quality. It's not just the quantity, it's also the quality. And the IPCC has given I could say, scary report about what will happen in Africa in climate change. It's already happening. We are talking of human insecurity. It's happening. Yes, it's happening mostly at the local level. You have a lot of farmer pastoralists, insecurity clashes. It's happening. That shows it's an indication of what is happening now. And if we are not careful, it will go out of hand. Yes, today we are talking about security, but security for who? Human security. Where is the human being? Where is the human face? We've talked about water. We've talked about energy. We've talked about policies. What about the human being? Where is the human being in all this? What will happen to the human being? Who is going to represent the human being? If at a forum like this, we're not even looking at the human being. We're talking of water, we're talking of anything else, but the human being. It's very important for us to really appreciate that it's water, security, water, energy, security, humans should come in, really, and then also the ecosystems. One of the issues, one of the main challenges which we have in managing these resources is the silo approach which we have. We know very well that there are a lot of clashes of human insecurity because of natural resources, competition for resources. But I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but when you are talking about water, when I'm talking about all sorts of ecosystems, I've not seen anyone from the security section, so that at least we can talk to each other and we understand what's happening, what can be happening. I'm not talking about I'm just talking about the security, so that we also want to know what it is they want, and we can also, from the resource point of view, talk to them about it. And to adapt to the impact of climate change, would really want to recommend that we talk of promoting dialogue between all these sectors. We are talking about at the different level, from the top, from the regional level, that's Africa-wide level. We've got a lot of institutions. My colleague is there from AMCO. We've got Africa Ministers Conference on Environment. We have different, of these bodies, and another body for energy. If they could come together with the bodies which deal with security, to come together and at least dialogue, so that we know what's happening. And please, we're not advocating that after these dialogues we come with new policies. We are saying no, let's implement what is there. And as we go on implementing, before implementing, we see what needs to be adjusted, and it's adjusted. And we desist from coming with new institutions, new policies. We're also talking about the issue of science. We make a lot of policies. Where is the science? The science is not there. It's not accessible, easily accessible to those who want to make policies, those who want to implement. There are a lot of studies which are being done by different people, institutions in Africa, some from outside Africa, but they do not go to the users. So one of the things which could be done is science policy dialogue, so that the scientists and politicians can discuss these ones, what they want, and also what the scientists offer. And this also should come in. We should also have representatives of the communities, because at the end of the day, it's the person on the local level who is going to make the changes. One of the things which we also have a problem is access to information. And I think we need to come up with a mechanism for people to access information on this. And if we are going to influence any change in behavior, we need to convince those, the policymakers, even the people, the practitioners, on the importance of these linkages. And then we advocate assessments which shows the linkages between climate change, environment, humans, and also all these linkages, and at different climatic, scenarios. And this would not just be for the, the big books. Yeah, you can come with the big books, but then you target the different types of material, of products, to the different people, to the different sectors. If it's scientists, if it's policymakers, they need to have it, but they need to understand, and they need to have clear signs, so that it's not just, we are not talking of, theory which is not backed by science. And the other thing which really needs to be talked about and promoted, my colleague from Ethiopia has talked about it. We're talking of using the environment as a means for peace, means for development. And in this end, we are talking about also working with the private sector and promoting, like investments, joint investments by the different countries. Because once you invest together, it's very rare to go to war over most of these things. And also you share the benefits. And the other thing which needs to be looked at is what happens at the local level, the local person. We are talking more at the higher level. The local person, you need to work with the local people as well to also promote them to invest. The private sector can come. I'm not talking about the small investments. Let's look at what meaningful investments and what can they also contribute. Most of the times we just assume local communities are poor, and that is it. But they've got a lot of resources which they can contribute to. For instance, we had a project with the Maasai community. And before we started working there, it was climate change adaptation. And people said, oh no, that's a pure community, that's a poor community. But then we had this idea of table banking, bringing in their money, and within a very short time, the community had, about 6 weeks, the community had about 800, an equivalent of 800,000 of their money circulating around. But we just need to look at what is there. And then if we can work with them, we can have solar projects, energy projects, any of the development, particularly focusing on improving the ecosystems. Now, I just want to briefly mention what UNEP has done, which gives us an edge where we can contribute to this, because we've done a lot of things. UNEP is a UN agency, and we respond to what the governments want us to do. The government set the pace, we respond to what we want to do. But as Secretariat, we are able also to influence decisions on what needs to be done. Right now, UNEP has been upgraded. It's now a universal membership. So you can imagine the amount of the power, the resources which we can leverage with this mandate. And our work spans from the global to the national. We've done assessments, global environment assessments, which the advantage of UNEP is we work with partners. We do not do assessments. We just get assessments and get people to come together. They agree, they come up with reports, which go through the different sectors and the stakeholders, from governments to private institutions, and also to centers of excellence. In Africa, we've done 2-3 African Environment Outlook, and this is what the Africans are saying, this is what's happening. And also, we've also done assessments at the regional level. We've done, in the water sector, we've done assessments on Atlas, the African Atlas of Water, and also at the river basin. We respond to what the governments of our constituents want. So we've also done post-conflict assessments. And that's one of the things which we've been doing quite well. Post-conflict assessments and the lessons which are learned can now be used in these other assessments. The other thing UNEP does is building consensus. We need to build consensus. We can talk and talk. If the governments have not agreed, it will be very difficult to implement. we've had some contentious, difficult issues. For instance, we've just come up with a resolution on wildlife. People agreeing how to deal with wildlife. It's not only animals, it's also trees, timber, any wildlife. And we've just also come up with a decision on ecosystems-based assessment, ecosystems-based adaptation, which fits in very well with this. And UNEP has been establishing regional institutions to address specific environmental challenges. Case in point, we've got the regional Cs, which is all over and is well known. UNEP facilitate the establishment. When it's established, we provide secretarial services, and when the organization has matured, then we hand over. And also the others, the Africa Ministers' Council on Water and AMSEN. In relation to this topic, what UNEP could do is to really raise awareness of the importance of this and build consensus so that governments will now starting with governments will start looking at this as a nexus. Nowadays, people are talking of water, energy, environment, and we also come in with the security in the and humans. But now you see the challenge. So many things are coming up. They're coming up. The litmus test is now how is it going to be implemented? That is the challenge. So I was saying UNEP can do this within its mandate and also move from there up to the demonstrating implementation at the local level. One of the things which we can...
1 minute.
Okay. One of the other things we can do is facilitate dialogue between the different constituencies, get ministers to come together and at the river basin level, and ministers also at the sectoral level to come together, and then also building consensus and demonstrating policy implementation. The other thing which UNEP can do, and he has got capacity to do, is to link Africa with the other continents. It's not in isolation. We are in this world together. Thank you.
Elizabeth, thank you very much, Elizabeth. I'm going to just open the floor for questions of clarification before I open the session for general questions to any of the speakers. Any questions of clarification? It seems none, and now the 18 people that put their hands up for general questions are welcome to do that again. Let me just see the hands. I've got two in the front, I've got two in the middle, I've got one at the back, and I've got one at the front here. And I'm going to actually take them from the back, the ones that were up first. Sorry, just hold your hands up because I'm going to assign a number to you. So we've got the hand at the back. The gentleman at the back will ask the first question. Then I'm coming to the front. I only had two hands here initially. Somebody else put their hands up now. So the lady at the back with the beige top. Second question, the lady just in front of you with the black. You'll be asking the third question. The two gentlemen here will ask the questions after that. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Kevin will ask the sixth question. And if we've got time after that, I'll do another round of questions. So we'll take the first questions, go to answers, and we'll proceed that way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your remarks today. My question is in regards to Somalia, and I was wondering what was their input or what was their role in this discussion about water conservation and water protection, if they had any input whatsoever, because I know no one really mentioned Somalia at all.
Sorry, is that question directed at a particular speaker, or can anybody respond? Yeah, I'm going to open up that question, but I'm going to limit it to one of the speakers to answer, just to provide opportunity for some additional questions as well. So any of the speakers that would like to respond to the role of Somalia in these discussions? You'll all get a chance, don't worry about it.
Okay. Now, basically, the question asked is quite general. It's not really asking anything specific, but generally, what one can say about Somalia in regard to water and environment is that it's a pastoral, largely a pastoral country, and as a result, the relationship with the neighbors in regard to the environment, where security is concerned, have basically moved to the area of the maritime security issues. Currently, there is an ongoing issue between Kenya and Somalia over the boundary. between the two countries. Should it face south or should it go parallel, and what are the implications of that? And that's a major issue. I do know for sure that the future in terms of gas and petroleum is going to Somalia, and that's going to have a lot of impact on the environment. The argument also has been put in regard to Somalia that much of the so-called pirates and others are actually economic nationalists, trying to protect water-based resources in Somalia, pirated by the international community. I mean, by members of international, cabals, fishing and so on. But again, that would fall under the environmental question. But I think the most contentious one is where, because of being a failed state in the last 20 or so years, Somalia has become a dumping ground for all manner of wastes internationally. And because it has no state of its own, it has been unable to protect itself in regard to the dumping of computer wastes and so on its waters. And how deep, profound this problem is a subject of investigation. Not as yet research has been done because of the insecurity situation. But in this environmental debate, I think Somalia is more of a victim than a villain.
Right, thank you very much. And I think that question and answer also speaks to the issue that's been raised, is the heterogeneity of these environments that we operate in at all levels. We talked about economics, we talked about availability of resources. I think that's a really interesting topic. I'm going to move to the front, the lady in the beige top, please.
Thank you. Ashley Bybee with the Institute for Defense Analyses. I have a quick question for Ms. Kaka. Your very last comment mentioned the need to link Africa with some of the other continents. Could you just provide a couple of examples of what might be some opportunities there?
Okay, what happens is you find the other regions, you have Asia, you have Latin America, other developing countries are facing similar challenges, and we exchange information, you bring them together and you share experiences. You want to learn, for instance, I'll give an example of China. Went to an area in China, they've got very little rainfall, 300 millimeters, no surface, no groundwater, but they are able to feed the whole province, with potatoes. So if we can link the African, like the similar conditions, ecosystems, for them to learn from there, we learn from each other, then that would help. That would be helpful. There are a lot of cases where we learn even the legislation, the legal aspects, where we can learn together.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I'm going to move to the next question that I had, the lady in the black jacket.
Hello, Ilona Coyle with the Environmental Law Institute. As the continent moves more towards regional integration, have you seen any particular regional institutions in your studies that are very good at the collection and dissemination of hydrological or meteorological data? And what factors or governance mechanisms make them able to do so effectively?
Is it mine?
Should be.
Okay, should be. Okay. I think it depends on where you are. I think in SADC, there are some institutions, I can't say which, but it's not like SADC itself. They collaborate with the particular institutions. I think CSIR, they exchange information. But, before I even go further, we should know that information can only be exchanged if it's there. If people have got confidence in providing information, particularly water information, it's classified sensitive by some people, by some countries.
Yeah, there's something there.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm going to come to the front with two hands that I have. The gentleman at the right-hand side of the room in the front.
Thank you. My name is Joseph Bere from Eritrean Press Group. My question is for Mr. Ababe. You mentioned Horn Africa, and I'm really surprised you don't mention Eritrea. As you know, Horn Africa is a war with itself. The biggest problem in Horn Africa is a war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. I don't know if you know or if you admit it. The last war in Somalia is a proxy war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. And if you see South Sudan, you will find Ethiopia and Eritrea right and left. Ethiopia is with one side, Eritrea is on the other side. I don't want to go into the details. And now Ethiopia is building a Millennium Dam, and unofficially there are big disagreement between Ethiopia and Egypt. And Eritrea is still unofficially sided with Egypt. So do we expect any proxy war between Eritrea and Ethiopia? As you are the head of Department and Security for International Institute, and as you said, your department is advice on policy matter for the Parliament and the Foreign Affairs. So what do you expect on the next Ethiopia? Still we expecting no peace, no war for the next another 15 or 20 years? Or is there anything new we can hear from you? Thank you.
So I would love to help the speakers out and just answer the question from this side, but I'm not going to be able to do that either.
Very difficult question. It's a very difficult question to guess. I mean, because of the current situation between the two countries and the role Eritrea had played a proxy war. I don't think that the current no war, no peace situation would be resolved, I mean, within limited 2 or 3 or 5 years. But there would be change between the two countries because since 2004, Ethiopia proposed 5-point peace talk points, which is openly asked repeatedly, I think, to the Eritrean government to have dialogue and solve the problem through peaceful means. And the international community has also supported this initiative that Ethiopia has engaged in. But from the Eritrean side, there is no response clearly that indicates Eritrea is not willing to negotiate with Ethiopia, but diplomatically there are signs that forget about the peaceful issue, forget about the dialogue issue. That tells many things if you see from the diplomatic perspective. But if the conditions continue, if now Egypt has established a new government, Al-Sisi is now formally established a new government, and Ethiopia and Egypt is to proceed to negotiate on comprehensive fields, on framework on Nile issue. So if Ethiopia and Egypt solve gradually the difference that they have, then Eritrea's role would be very little or very low. And if the conditions in South Sudan, the peace process, the negotiation between the incumbent and the opposition is resolved through negotiation as we expect within 2 to 3 years, then the Eritrea's role in bringing problem in the region would be very minimal. But I don't think that Eritrea would set aside everything for the international community and hope that if Eritrea engage in proxy war again, then the revenge will be maybe very difficult for it, because the international community wants sanctions are imposed repeatedly on Eritrea and are now internationally recognized as conflict dealer in the region. So I don't think Eritrea will continue or engage itself as a proxy war. But I don't know, it's politics. Politics is a game. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail. That's my personal opinion. I mean,
thank you very much. I think that's quite useful to frame the response to that question in a, I'm going to say, a scenario sense, to say, well, what can potentially play out in the future? You're not making a prediction to say this precisely will work out, but that's the dynamic. And I think from our broader question perspective, that's the important thing, to understand what those dynamics are and what could potentially happen in the future. And we talked earlier around climate resilient policies, but you also want policies that will be resilient in different political futures. So I think what you've going to relate to us is helpful in that context. The next question that I had is also the gentleman in the front. Yes, please, sir.
Lawrence Freeman, Africa Desk EIR. I think Ethiopia is doing many useful things on their development of water, energy, and agriculture. I think when the Gibi 3 comes online next year, that's another 1,900 megawatts of power that is going to be sold to the region. And when the Grand Renaissance Dam comes on 17, that's a game changer with 6,000 megawatts. And I think there's great potential, as we pointed out, for this to be an area of joint economic development. When I was in Khartoum last month, the Ethiopians want to work with Khartoum on food for energy. And you could feed the entire Horn of Africa. But even with all, there's a lot of water, but even with that, the Ethiopia, Sudan, Egypt do not have enough water. There's 9 countries living off the Nile. So therefore, you have to think outside the box. And it seems to me that we're going to have to follow the idea that President Zuma has now initiated for nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is the best form for desalination. We're going to have to desalinate a new Nile River. And nuclear energy dwarfs wind, and solar, and energy flux density. So desalination by nuclear energy, has that been considered by people? I mean, that seems to me is going to be part of the future because there is not enough water in some regions in Africa.
Thank you very much. I take that as a comment. I don't
know people have thought about that.
Oh, I understand. Any of the panel members that want to respond to, the comment set in the context, and the question is, have this been explored further?
Except as a comment, and we have to deal with...
I think the answer is yes. But you've now added momentum to that thinking, and we'll certainly do that. Thank you very much, sir. We're going across to Kevin on this side, and while Kevin is formulating his question, you can then... I'm going to take a next round of questions as well. We'll probably have about time for 4. Don't put up your hands just yet. And it's not going to be a competition with the first hands up. So we'll do a random selection after we've dealt with this question. Thank you. Kevin.
Yeah. It really goes to what Elizabeth has been talking about. I mean, first of all, you suggest that UNEP is growing its political leverage or influence. And you kind of laid out this model whereby you listen to national governments, but yet it seems like UNEP itself is expanding its mission, and you also have quid pro quo, some kind of dialogue and influence over national policy decision making. So that I just holding that as a truism. My question is that you talk about engaging the private sector. And if you want to move from a situation that I would characterize today as ad hoc, where we're discussing these things in different fora over time, are you suggesting that UNEP should somehow be the place where, for example, in the commercial sector, given its influence in engaging with national government, that in the commercial sector for engaging private sector investment, that UNEP can then become a tool or a mechanism or a more permanent forum for engaging the private sector in presenting bankable projects that have been, the boxes have been checked by national government, UNEP member states, so that we can actually get to a place where, you know, once or twice a year, businesses can come in, they're interested in investing, but they know where to invest. They could look at bankable projects, and they could be assured that the process is not simply going to sputter away, but that is going to actually move to exactly what you want, which is implementation.
Okay. I just want to clarify that what UNEP does, we facilitate for the governments to come together and the private sector, because we realize that for us to for the continent to make any progress, the government cannot do it on its own. We need the private sector. So what we do is to bring them back. We've got a division in France whose sole responsibility is to engage the private sector. And then, for instance, if it's like AMCO, if they want to have anything done, then we can call for a forum, for a caucus, for them to come in and discuss themselves. It's not UNEP, we just facilitate. We do not do the discussion, we facilitate. And the other thing is, in many cases, we receive complaints about the private sector not towing the line. And when we work with them, at least we are able to enter into dialogue with them and come up with the proposals on what can be done. I don't know if I've answered your question. I know you wanted to know if UNEP will have bankable projects. Is that your question?
Well, sorry, I'm not going to entertain a discussion on this. So my suggestion is that after the session that we just have that discussion outside. I think there was you provided a position from UNEP on the issue of what your role is, and I think that's useful. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to take a second round of questions. If you can put up your hands if you want to ask a question. I have 5 hands, and I'm going to take them from the back, the lady in the pink, then the gentleman right in front of the camera, and then the 3 people right at the front, and I'll call your names when we get to that point. Again, question, answer. Yes, ma'am.
This is if each of the panelists can answer this question. I'm Lisa Palmer. I'm a public policy scholar here at the Wilson Center. My question has to do with climate change science and how it informs policies in the governments in which you work. You know, what is the highest level of leadership in? Is it a cabinet position? You know, if there's a science advisor to the African leaders that you work with, I'm just trying to understand how science informs the decisions that are being made in your countries.
I'll allow any of the panel members to respond to that, and also if anybody else wants to contribute, you're welcome.
I don't think there is any specific answer to your question as to whether we have, science, there is a science advisor or such institutional, emerging institutional frameworks of addressing climate change science and related matters. What I do know for sure is that the broader framework within which the so-called African Renaissance anchored on the African peace and security architecture and the African governance architecture are informed by the notion that in order to realize prosperity and development, you have to understand to mediate the problem of climate change. And in this regard, science is very important. And there is a whole department within the African Union dealing with those kind of issues, very deep scientific matters. And climate change is already identified as a major issue, and Africa is in dialogue with the rest of the world on this particular question. The late Meles was the chair of that particular committee within the African Union dealing with that. I think he is a successor. And Africa has participated, the African Union specifically has participated in all the global dialogues relating to climate change. And behind the late Meles and the African group on this particular case are very well knowledgeable scientists working with the leadership to provide a nuanced politics. Take, for example, the idea of trading in carbon and so on. That will require a scientist, it will require you to have your nose deeply steeped in data, and that data must be scientific. So there is that deep knowledge, but it is all harnessed around this idea of the African negotiating group, which is negotiating with the rest of the world. And I think that's the way I would frame it. There is that capacity, but that capacity also can be expanded. There's room also for cooperation and partnership on strengthening that particular capacity.
I think the problem in Africa is that Africa, if you see the regional economic communities in East, West, South, and North, particularly if you see the IGAD, IGAD is good at early warning system. They have good indicators on conflict, but they lack on climate change somehow. they lack on energy security, they lack on water security. That's where the issue, they have to develop indicators that provides policy makers and the decision makers as well, so that to take comprehensive and integrated indicators to address those problems. So I think that's very important in the near future, that the regional economic community needs to work, and also the governments, including the regional economic communities as well as respective governments, need to focus on identifying and formulating indicators that would serve communally in addressing environment-related challenge and human security challenge, and different areas where the government should move forward.
Great, thank you very much. I think that's certainly an interesting question, and also warrants further discussion, perhaps just outside of the room. There's unfortunately time for one more question. I'm going to take that from the gentleman at the back in the middle of the room. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Kunojo Fatimi, and thanks for the wonderful thanks for the wonderful presentation you guys presented. My question is going to be directed to Elizabeth. What are the current efforts right now, since you did say in your presentation that water is very low in the budgets of most African countries, and also putting a human face in forum discussions? What are the current efforts being made to change that orientation, and also to engage the local constituents right now, especially the pastoralists, to make sure that the current governments right now are making sure that their voices are being heard? And what are the current policies that you think should be done right now to reverse that? Thank you.
You know, to answer your question in short is, we've got all sorts of policies, all sorts of reports. What we need is to implement what we have, the recommendations we've had. We've got the integrated water resources management framework, which governments are using to develop plans. And within that framework, you get all stakeholders to come in and contribute what it is they want. But the linkage, the weakness is now on the translation implementation. That has been our challenge, really. And I think there's no point in me trying to answer questions. There is the person from Africa Ministers Council on Water. He knows. He's going to give you the correct answer instead of me estimating.
It seems that I'm going to allow an answer from the floor at this point in time. So if you can keep it short, we have run out of time, and that will also be the last input to the discussion.
Yeah, direct answers. Yeah, we've been working on it to let the budget move, because the ministers of finance are responsible for budget. Now we are having a forum between ministers of water and sanitation and ministers of finance together. That has never happened, under the auspices of the Africa Development Bank during their annual meetings, and also at the World Bank spring meeting. We bring water ministers where they meet the finance ministers and put their case, their economic case. With that, the budget is now increasing for water.
Fantastic. Well, we just put our hands together for a very welcome response, and thank you for that. But we are also going to put our hands together now for the speakers. Well, I'd like to thank them for their questions. The only thing left for me to do is to, from this session perspective, to thank the African Centre for Strategic Studies for coordinating this process and getting us together, and then the Wilson Centre for hosting us. Thank you very much for your hospitality. And I'm going to hand over the microphone to Raymond Gilpin to close the session for us.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. We've had, over the past couple of days, we've had very rich discussions and insightful case studies, and the interaction from the audience and you the participants has, I think, demonstrated not just the value of what we've brought to the table, but how pertinent and timely the discussion is. So I'd really like to thank you all. I'd also like to close where we started and take a leaf out of Professor Vogel's book. I think one of the things that seem to cut across is that we have a lot of issues, a lot of entities, and a lot of thoughts. And I think that if we leave here with one thing, I think it should be the urgency of reframing. I think we need to reframe not just the debate, but also reframe our approach to this very important issue. What next? I think there are three major things. Firstly, we would like to continue to raise awareness of these issues, bring people like the Council of Ministers who would answer a timely question and let us know what's happening on the budget front for water and security issues, but also continue to connect people, people on both sides of the Atlantic working on this pressing issue. Secondly, we'd like to establish a viable community of interest so that the discussion doesn't end here. We'll be able to continue having sessions like this so that we'll be able to move the needle a little bit further to the right. Thirdly, we want to be able to share the outputs from this meeting, but also think about the outcomes, where we would all like to go together as far as not just cerebral understanding of the issues, but practically what can we do and how could we influence those who have the ability and capacity to act. In closing, I'd like to acknowledge you, the attendees. Thank those who joined us by live web streaming. Also thank the ambassador for attending and for participating throughout. Special thanks go to my friend and colleague, Dr. Monde Muyangwa, for being such gracious hosts. And thanks to her program here at the Wilson Center, we've been able to partner in this important way. Thanks to her team as well for excellent support and for making us feel at home, if not entirely comfortable, those who've been feeling a little cold. But thank you so much for everything. I'd also like to offer special thanks to our partner organizations. The Environmental Security Unit at the U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM in Stuttgart. Jeff, thank you so much. If you just raise your hand so people know who you are. Jeff, thank you so much. The Corps of Engineers, Swati. You just wave so people know who you are. And then you've met our other two participating organizations, Marius from the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research in South Africa, and Kevin from the Institute for the Analysis of Global Security here in Washington, D.C. I think it remains for me to also thank the Great Africa Center team, led in this instance by Kade Kalon, who is somewhere at the back. Also mention Mariam, Eric, Serge, Devon, Michelle, who have all contributed in diverse ways to making this successful. Thank you so much once again, and have a good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. I like when you questions around the...
So, yeah, that's the point.